Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and good to see a lot of new faces here tonight, or this afternoon. I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order for Monday, February 9th. We respectfully acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquian-speaking peoples, represented by the Kasepsin and Songhees nations, whose stewardship of these lands continue to this day. May I have a mover to adopt today's agenda, please? Thank you. Councillor Olson. Discussion? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. We'll move on. Adoption of the minutes. May I have a mover to adopt the minutes of the January 12th, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes? Thank you. Councillor Grove. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. We'll move on. There were no written submissions received prior to the agenda publication, and one written submission has been submitted after the agenda publication and will be attached to the agenda tomorrow. And I believe no members of the public have registered to speak virtually. Confirm that. Thank you very much. At this moment time, I'll ask members from the public that you now be given the opportunity to present your concerns or ask questions. You'll be given 2 minutes, at which time you will see a green, amber, or red light. Alternately, you may wish to wait for the agenda item to be brought up and to speak at that time. Maybe show of hands for all those that would rather just hold off to the agenda item. Okay, just one. I'll try to remember. Oh, okay, 2, 3 people, and I'll remember to pause there before we start the agenda item. Thank you. So the first item on the agenda is last call for anybody want to speak at this point in time. Oh, please, Mr. Day.
Hi, I hope I'm not too loud. Usually I'm too loud. Tim Day, Charlie Place. Point of order to start off here. There's been misrepresentation that I submitted 3 letters for tonight's meeting, and only one is being acknowledged. I have copies of emails I sent to the city, one at 11:22 and one at 11:57. The cutoff is noon. I don't know if members of council have received these emails or they've been screened by staff. So that's what I want to go over. I'd like to know if council has received my 3 letters to start with, I guess, before I start talking. I'm not going to make much sense if you didn't get my letters. Corporate officer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The letters from Mr. Day have been received and they'll be upended to the regular agenda from 6 o'clock, and all of council have received them.
They've all
They have, and they will all be upended to the regular agenda, not committee of the whole.
I'm very sorry because I did submit them. I apologize. I submitted them for the next meeting because I know how the minutes work. And if I submit it for the committee of the whole, they'll never be seen. So I'm sorry.
Okay, not a problem. Thank you.
Okay, so I have 3 subjects I'd like to talk about. I'll be as quick as I can. I'm almost out of time. First one is that except for 2 members of council, there seems to be a disconnect with the pace of development in Colwood, in that it's been repeated over and over, and the facts that are shown on the website have been false since false, maybe not a good, yeah, false is a good word, since 2023. The number of houses that are reported as being built in Colwood is usually 2 to 3 times what the city reports. And I've raised the point that 600 homes are being built, and I keep hearing 200 to 300. No one believes me.
Well, we'll get you to wrap up, please.
So no one believes me. No one believes the CRD. So this past November, for the first time, November 2025, you guys have been on council for 3 years, was the first time that the actual numbers for 2023 and 2024 were published by the city. And those numbers were big, over 600 each year. Yet everyone has been, this whole table, only 2 can acknowledge that 600 number, because that's very important, because you're going to reach the capacity a lot faster. If you extrapolate from 200 units a year and go to what is 600 units a year.
Could we get you to wrap up, Mr. Day, right now? Because
Okay.
you are over your time.
Okay, so that's the capacity issue. The other one is to do with the 6 stories next to single family.
If I'll ask you to sit right now, and then I'll just check around if anyone
Oh.
else to speak at this point in time. And then I will call for a second time if you wish to, for another 2 minutes. Anyone else wish to speak at this time? Okay, I will give you 2 more minutes, Mr. Day.
Okay, so the summary of the first one, I have 3 letters that I've sent to council for the next meeting. That even when you see the website, the best website, the newest one, that reports the 618, 676, not 200, it shows a line, and that's supposed to represent something on the graph. Well, that line on the graph shows you what the slope would look like at 300 units per year. But actually it's 600. So if you look at that line on that page, it's a lot more vertical. So it has been pointed out that the capacity will be reached by 2030, yet no capacity will be able to be gotten till 2045. Even with that knowledge, we have a septic thing. Somehow people can connect, even though we've approved 3 times the amount of what can go in. So the next one is about, well, this information about the Latoria floodplain, and it's been from the start, since 2022, when staff went out and found some developers to purchase the lots along Latoria Avenue because they were cheap, because they were in a floodplain. So I see in the last one here, the OCP review, it's got a picture, and it's got proposed green space at the bottom of the picture. It's huge, but it's not what's proposed. The green space in reality doesn't even take in the creek. 30 meters of undevelopable land. But that actual picture is showing you is double the space of the actual green space that you agreed to, and they're going to just ram through. Anyways, the minimum of it is 34 meters of this that's on the narrow end, and the other end is over 60 meters, trying to show you that 30 meters looks like. Okay, so it's just more disinformation. The last one is about the.
I'm going to have to interrupt you. We've given you your full 2 minutes.
Oh, okay, I'm done.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else that wishes to speak at this time? The rest, I'll make sure that you get to speak. I'm going to assume it's the Metchosin widening that all 3 people want to talk about. Mr. Conrad, did you want to talk when it was the Metchosin widening? Yeah. And everybody else is the same, I would assume. Okay, thank you. Okay, we get on to a new business. Introduction of the North Latoria Corridor Zone. Mr. Johnson, could you please introduce the speaker?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the zone for the North Latoria Corridor Zone. The last time we brought forward a zone that was being applied to a property, Council requested that we bring this and the zone for comment before we apply it to a property. That's why you see it on the agenda here tonight or today for committee. There has been an application whereby the owners would like to move forward with development, and this is the proposed zone here for council's feedback before we bring that application forward for council's consideration. Mari is here to provide a brief overview, as well as Desiree Gibbons, our planner.
Okay, thank you very much. Over to you, Mari.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So this is the introduction of the North Latoria Corridor Zone. So the intent of this afternoon is for Council to review the zone to ensure that you feel that it aligns with the North Latoria area plan that was adopted in January of 2026, as well as the OCP. The reason why we did bring this to committee of the whole is for council to workshop it and to provide staff feedback on the zone ahead of bringing forward rezoning applications. The zone is not at bylaw stage, so it is a working document that we are able to amend at this time. I also just wanted to note that through this process, we have looked at a number of different levels of policies and tools. So we've looked at the OCP in relation to North Latoria. We have adopted the area plan. Tonight, we are reviewing the North Latoria corridor zone, which must align with the area plan and the OCP. And then each individual property will need to come forward to rezone the property. And with that, we negotiate conditions as part of a development agreement. So that's another level of tool that we can use to ensure that the city is getting what we are looking to secure. Now, the purpose of the North Latoria corridor zone is to regulate the land use in the building form. So what the permitted uses are, what the FAR is, what the height is, things like transportation and environmental protection. Those are policies that are considered within the North Latoria area plan, as well as the broader OCP. So I just wanted to start with that, but I will pass it over to Desiree now.
Thank you and good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Just as a little bit of a recap on the North Latoria corridor and the visioning process, the visioning project started in 2022 and wrapped up with Council's adoption of the North Latoria area plan in January 2026. In April 2022, the city received its first rezoning application for one of the properties in the North Latoria area, and to date, we currently have 3 active rezoning applications covering 11 of the 13 properties. So the purpose of the NLC zone, as Mari mentioned, is to provide a clear, consistent zoning framework for these properties. Once it's adopted into the land use bylaw, the zone will create a transparent and predictable framework for evaluating both current and future rezoning applications within the corridor. So the proposed NLC zone is intended to translate the policy direction of the OCP into a regulatory zoning framework. It has been designed to specifically align with the North Latoria area plan, the applicable land use designations, including the neighborhood hillside and shoreline designation, as well as the neighborhood center designation, and the city's development permit area guidelines. I'll just walk you through all the key OCP policies and explain how the zone aligns with each of them. So starting with the sub areas, the North Latoria area plan divides the corridor into 2 sub areas as shown on this slide. It includes a mixed use sub area shown in orange and a multi-unit residential sub area shown in purple. The NLC zone mirrors this configuration and is divided into 2 sub areas as well. Area 1 of the zone supports a broader mix of uses that's consistent with a mixed use center, and area 2 is focused primarily on multi-unit residential with limiting neighborhood serving commercial uses. And just getting into the land uses, in the mixed use sub area of the North Latoria area plan, mixed use buildings, multi-unit residential, commercial, institutional, live work, and home occupation uses are supported. Area 1 of the NLC zone implements this by permitting multi-use residential and mixed-use buildings, including apartments and congregate housing, commercial uses such as bakeries, offices, personal services, restaurants, and retail, and institutional uses such as civic uses, daycares, and public buildings. So in the multi-unit residential sub-area, the North Latoria area plan supports similar uses, except it also, it only supports small-scale commercial and mixed use, as opposed to just full commercial and mixed use. Area 2 of the NLC zone aligns with this by permitting multi-unit residential forms, including attached housing, apartments, and congregate housing. Small-scale commercial and mixed uses such as bakeries, offices, personal services, and institutional uses such as civic uses, daycares, and public buildings. So with respect to building
Could
height,
you just go back one slide, please?
yes, of
Desiree?
course.
Do you prefer questions right now as we're going along?
Sure,
Okay,
yes,
so
absolutely.
my question here is pretty simple here. The North Latoria area plan and the North Latoria corridor zone. So I'm just trying to, this is the hard time I had to figure out right now. Where do we actually dictate, do we actually dictate the percentage of how, what we're gonna have as, the multi, apartments and single family dwellings? Do we actually dictate, is that in the plan or in the zone? I wasn't too sure because, yeah, and what do we do with the commercial? Where do we actually dictate that? Or do we have numbers that we have as targets or, affordable homes? What percentage do we have? Is that, which plan is that in?
Thank you for the question. So that would be within the North Latoria corridor zone that you would be dictating if you require a certain minimum gross floor area of commercial uses, this would be the place to put it. Currently, we haven't included any minimum GFA requirements for commercial uses in order to be flexible and allow the market to dictate whether those uses can be supported. And the intent was to avoid having any um, GFA or like building space that would sit vacant if there wasn't a use. But if council would like us to set a minimum gross floor area for commercial uses, we can certainly include that within area one.
Okay, so well, that's not at this meeting because this is just an introduction. Is that correct?
Thank you. Yes, at this meeting, it'd be an appropriate time to provide us some feedback on that.
Okay, thank you.
So in terms of building height, the North Latoria area plan sets a maximum height of up to 6 stories. The NLC zone implements this by permitting apartment buildings up to 6 stories and attached housing or townhomes up to 3 stories, which better aligns with the typical built forms in the city and comparable zones. With respect to density, the North Latoria area plan establishes a maximum density of 2.5 floor area ratio, or FAR. FAR is calculated as the total gross floor area of the entire building divided by the total lot area, as illustrated on in the diagram on the left. So the NLC zone, oh, sorry.
Question from Councilor Day, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can I get you to just go back 2 slides? So the OCP review. Now haven't found anything that says that the 2004 legislation that required the mapping of the hazards has changed. And when we're looking at our proposed uses, where do we talk about what's achievable on the land? Because we're not showing any maps with the flood area hazards, and we're not identifying how we're going to address the riparian area setbacks within any of the work that we've done here.
Thank you for the question, Councilor Day, and through the chair. So the setbacks required to the creek and floodplain provisions would be addressed through the natural hazards DPA. So the city currently has parameters for when a development permit, environmental development permit is required. So that's anytime the development is occurring within 30 meters of a stream, you're required to apply for an environmental DP, and that will establish what areas of the land can be built on. So it includes a what they call a streamside protection and enhancement area. So that identifies buildable and non-buildable areas. So that wouldn't be something that would be addressed within the zone, but would be identified through when developers come in for their environmental DP and go through the provincial regulation process for riparian areas.
So when you're building this vision of what the North Latoria area could be, you are therefore specifically excluding any limitations on that land at this point. So we're drawing pictures of buildings on land that is in a floodplain, and the only consideration we seem to be giving to it is the distance away from where the water course is actually above the ground. And I'm concerned that we're doing a lot of effort to identify a potential development when the proposal may not be able to be realized due to those issues. So how do we make a more realistic plan?
Thank you for the question. So, the Local Government Act requires municipalities to designate areas of hazard via mapping or policy statement. So, our existing OCP has the Natural Hazard DPA, which includes policy statements related to floodplains. So, that requirement from the Local Government Act is already addressed within our OCP because we had already enabled development within the North Latoria area even before the adoption of the North Latoria area plan because of the OCP designations that were already in place and are still in place. So this is we did the adoption of the area plan, which is the higher level policy. And then we are reviewing the zone this evening, which is permitting the building form and uses. And then at the time of development permit is when we require a natural hazard and an environmental development permit. And at that time, we would require reports from QEPs to ensure that the structures are not located within areas of flood risk, and that the structures from a geotechnical perspective are safe for the use intended.
So there's a portion of the mapped area that has already had engineering evaluation that does say it is not suitable for development as it stands today. And I'm concerned that we continue to envision and in fact have extended that 6-story designation adjacent to 1- and 2-story homes without regard for how buildable or realistic that might be. And my understanding was that when this is included with our OCP, the OCP is supposed to have mapping to support that floodplain. And if you look to our neighbors in Langford, also in the Latoria Valley, they do have floodplain mapping that's been used to address the Latoria Valley area. So I'm just wondering why we don't have that mapping.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So at the time of the development of the OCP, we conducted mapping for steep slopes. So with our online mapping, we have a layer that identifies the natural hazard development permit area, and it identifies areas of steep slopes, as that was a part of the scope of work of the development of the OCP at the time. And then at that time, we included policy statements to address the floodplain risk. Now, if council would like to do floodplain mapping for the entire municipality, then that is something that council could direct staff to do as part of an OCP update. It would not typically be done on a site-by-site basis for the purpose of the OCP. The OCP would include like a full mapping exercise to identify flood risk. For the North Latoria and a site-by-site level, I would say that as part of the area plan, we enable development, and as part of the zone, we permit various permitted uses and building forms, but then it's the responsibility of the applicant to conduct those environmental reports from QEPs to establish what that buildable and non-buildable area is on a property. So that is conducted at the time of development permit. This is just rezoning. And so, as we've said, rezoning, it is a conceptual stage. It's just to permit those uses and density. At the time of development permit is when we identify the buildable and non-buildable areas. And in this case, it might likely be a floodplain risk. And at that time of development permit, they would identify those areas.
Okay, it seems backwards to me that we don't figure out that it can support the housing before we design where the housing can go, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. I too am supporting Councillor Day in this. I'm looking at a document before me from the Ministry of Water, Lands and Air Protection that was in May of 2004 that was amended by the Ministry of Forests, Lands and Natural Resources and Operations and whatever in 2018. And it actually states in here that official community plans must contain general land use policy statements and maps respecting restrictions on the use of the land that is subject to hazardous conditions. OCP should include statements that endorse and emphasize the need to manage development in flood-prone areas in order to reduce impacts on people and property. And I can tell you that in order to preserve the tree canopy and whatnot that we're trying to do in this Latoria area with this build, and to look after the riparian and give it its setbacks and everything, I think the way to go would be to go with underground parking. And if that were to happen, and that underground parking floods, it's the city that's going to be liable for selling these, having people buy these condos that have a parking lot that floods. I heard you say, Mary, that maybe that we would map the whole city. I think it should be done. People, developers, everybody should know before they go and say, hey, that piece of land looks great, whether it's a flood zone or not. So I think that we are not providing the correct information, and I think that could hold the city liable. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Comments, Marty? Okay, thank you. Seeing no, I'll let you continue on, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, I'll just start with density. So the North Latoria area plan permits up to a 2.5 floor area ratio, and that's the total gross floor area of all the buildings and structures on a lot divided by the total area of the lot, as illustrated in the figure on the left. So the NLC zone permits a 2.5 floor area ratio for apartment buildings and a 1.2 floor area ratio for attached housing, as I mentioned, to align more strongly with the typical built form that we see for townhouses. While and for setbacks, the OCP does not prescribe any fixed setback guidelines for multifamily developments. However, the design guidelines for the centers recommends a front setback of 2 to 5 meters, a side setback of 1.5 to 7.5 meters, and a rear setback of 3 to 10 meters. So the setbacks in the NLC zone are meeting or exceeding these guidelines. So lot coverage refers to the percentage of a lot covered by buildings or structures and excludes the total proposed green space shown here. So it would be calculated on the remaining lot shown in gray. So in the NLC zone, the lot coverage is limited to 50% of the lot for apartments and 40% of the lot for townhouses. And these limits are intended to help balance development intensity as well as to protect the environment, support tree canopy retention, and encourage landscaping and site adaptive design. To help with transition between new development and adjacent established neighborhoods, the NLC zone includes a 45-degree angular plane regulation. So this requires that buildings step back within a 45-degree line measured from the highest point of the ground along the shared property line, as shown on this slide. The intent here is to help mitigate impacts from shadowing, overlook, and privacy while still allowing potential development to occur.
Sorry about that, Counselor Day. Making notes here.
No problem. This is a lot to take in, but this fails to take into account the shadowing that will happen because the properties are to the north. Therefore, all of the light that is currently, encouraging those gardens and green spaces to grow is coming from the south, east, and west directions. And not only that, because of our northern latitude, that sunshine is not directly overhead. That is at a significant angle the majority of the year. So, as well as being potentially overlooked, this is drastically changing the nature and the environment that the properties adjacent may be in. So is there a plan to address this more than these 3 to 10 meter setbacks? Is there going to be a better review of the impacts from the much higher density buildings adjacent to older neighborhoods?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Day, and through the chair. So there's still an opportunity through each rezoning application to request a shadow study from the applicants to demonstrate that there won't be any impacts on adjacent residential neighborhoods. If this is something that council would like to see, then we can certainly consider that before we bring any of the applications forward.
I think it's quite important that we get those shadow studies and do them the right way. I've seen some shadow studies done by other developments in other parts of Colwood that are rather optimistic and miss the issue that overlook is as important as overshadowing.
Counselor Grove.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me, in the slide, the OCP review lot coverage, that green highlighted area, I'm going to assume is the aggregated green space for the entire area and represented to visually assist in understanding the percentage rather than any actual specific area.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Grove, and through the chair. Yes, that is correct. The purpose of the lot coverage that was shown on this slide is just to highlight how we're calculating lot coverage within the North Latoria corridor zone. So because the proposed green space will likely become municipally owned land, lot coverage is calculated off of the remainder of the lot, so the privately owned lot. So it excludes the proposed green space.
Thank you. And could I just ask if how it relates to other development, for instance, zoning along Suk Road, or how does it relate to that in terms of percentage? Or indeed what's going on elsewhere in the city?
Thank you for the question. Yes, so I think in terms of other zones, like the TGA1 zone, I believe it aligns most zones have between 50 to 75% lot coverage, depending on if it's located within a center or downtown area of Colwood. But typically in a multi-unit residential use such as this, it would be around 50% for apartments, and then a little bit lower for townhouses, between 25 to 35%.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
So I'm learning something new here. So are you telling me right now that that NLC zone is apartments and townhomes only? There's no single detached homes?
Thank you for the question. And yes, that's correct. It would be apartments, townhouses, and Yeah, just it's intended to align with the North Latoria area plan, and I don't think single family was envisioned within that as well.
Okay, I didn't understand that before, so thank you for clarification. Thank you. Please proceed.
So in terms of the open space and landscaping requirements, the NLC zone includes several landscaping requirements, including the retention of existing trees and native vegetation, a minimum of 10% landscaped area, and 1 tree planted for every 7.5 meters of frontage. These provisions align with the OCP policies regarding tree retention, soft landscaping, and creating a high-quality public realm. So the staff recommendation before you is to consider the NLC zone in conjunction with the first rezoning application in the North Latoria area plan, or that's subject to the North Latoria area plan. And that council consider directing staff to use the NLC zone for evaluating all current and future rezoning applications for lands that are subject to the North Latoria area plan. Other options include the staff recommendation with any revisions as suggested by council, or to defer the decision and direct staff to provide additional information. And option 4 would be to refer the item to planning and land use for discussion. And yes, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have at this time. Thank you so much.
Please, Councillor Day. Questions?
Thank you. Given that this area is a hillside shoreline with a lot of mature trees, and the riparian area is desired to be protected, and we want to mitigate stormwater issues in this area, I think that 10% open space is not enough for the lot development, because in order to retain the trees, it which is critical to retaining the stormwater flows that currently exist going into Latoria Creek, it's going to be pretty important to retain those soil areas where the trees currently exist. So I'm just, I think we need to see how we might be able to retain the trees because of the stormwater. Recently, there's been a lot of flooding up in the Comox Valley. I was watching I know the area well, and I was concerned with what was causing it to be different than previous years. And there is quite a good presentation available through a YouTuber about what is leading to that. And a huge amount of it is deforestation, whether it's from logging or development, the results are the same, that the downstream flows are greatly increased and the risks are growing in terms of the impacts from that. So is it possible to get some mapping to identify? I saw that on one of your maps that you put up, you have some polygons of the existing treed areas. Can we do some mapping to identify those treed areas for preservation that would guide how we develop things going forward?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Day, through the chair. So each rezoning application is also going to be considered in conjunction with or assessed against the North Latoria area plan, which targets a 50% tree retention rate on private property and a 75% tree retention rate in the proposed green area. So as applications come forward, you'll get to see which trees are going to be retained and protected, and that can be those protections can be embedded within a Section 219 covenant to ensure that those trees will be indeed retained throughout the construction period. In terms of the overall mapping, maybe I'll pass it to Maury to elaborate on.
Yeah, thank you. I would say that that mapping would be conducted on a site-by-site basis when applicants would submit their arborist report. So they would do an inventory of trees on every single property and inventory what trees would be retained or removed as part of their development, ensuring that they meet the policies within the area plan for tree retention. We also obviously have our urban forest bylaw, and they would have to apply for a tree permit with ratio replacement requirements as part of tree removal. So there are a number of tools for us to use to regulate tree removal and retention. I would also say with the open space comment, that is a minimum usable open space. So that's not necessarily everything but the footprint of the building. So the lot coverage is 50%, and then the usable open space is 10%. So the intention of there is to have things like seating or an amenity area. So that is the intention of a usable open space. And then the remainder of the property would not be a structure because of the lot coverage limitation. And so there's a number of regulatory tools that regulate the development of the site.
Yeah, that's unfortunately not very comforting because the replacement trees are much smaller and they don't take up nearly as much water as the mature trees do. And I've actually seen that occur in my neighborhood when clearing for just 2 lots was done to the north of us. So it's unfortunate that we don't seem to have any way to stipulate the preservation of the way the groundwater is currently flowing. And there's significant waterways through that area that will greatly impact the roadway.
I just have a couple questions, Mari. I think you sort of answered it in the email, but not really. And that is, once the zone is in place, my question is, what negotiating tools do we have, aside from Section 219s to secure things like, affordable housing, amenities, design improvements, for example, that beyond what's written in the zoning. Is there, what are some of the negotiating tools?
Yeah, so at the time applicants come forward for rezoning applications to council, staff have negotiated conditions that we are proposing to be embedded within the Section 219 covenant. So that's the development agreement that forms part of the staff recommendation for all of our rezoning applications. So that is the tool that we use to negotiate things that are above and beyond what is already required by our bylaws. So what you see as part of a development agreement is not required in our bylaws because we require them in our bylaw. So the Section 219 covenant is the tool that we use to request above and beyond what's already required. The Section 219 covenant is, it's not a bylaw, so it's not enforceable by bylaw. It's enforceable by implementation essentially from the city. The city is the owner of the Section 219 covenant. So we typically have a number of requirements with triggers. So it will be prior to development permit, they must do this. Prior to building permit, they must do this. And so when an applicant comes forward to submit their development permit as part of our internal process, we review the development agreement to ensure that they are meeting those requirements at those trigger points.
Thank you. I did understand it then. Okay, but it's good for the public to understand this too. Okay, and my second question is, it's to Councillor Day's point before. Are all the setbacks, the angular planes and the heights, are they are our rules strong enough to ensure, you know, the existing single detached homes are protected? Do you feel how comfortable do you feel about that?
So I would say the height restrictions within the zone is the strongest tool to regulate height. The proposal for the setback within the North Latoria zone of the stories above 4 stories, that is not seen in every zone. So that is kind of special to the North Latoria zone, I would say. There are policies within the area plan to support that height regulation that is within the zone. But I would say that height is meant to be in the zone, and that would be the strongest tool for that. We would check that at time of development permit and time of building permit.
Thanks. And my last question is just process. So what's the process? What's the timeline for this process right now? Because you're introducing this right now. I just wanted to understand when we get more public input into this, if there is. I just wanted to understand what the whole entire process is.
Yeah, so the intention of the North Latoria corridor zone is that that zone would be applied to all properties within the North Latoria area plan. So we are introducing the zone this afternoon to seek feedback, and then we will come forward with the actual rezoning applications. So the intention is to come likely the first meeting in March with the first rezoning application. That would be reviewed by council. So the intention is for them to rezone to the NLC zone. And at that time, staff will be introducing the conditions to go within the development agreement for those specific properties. So this evening is to seek your feedback on the zone, and then we will return with the rezoning applications. This was something that we learned as part of a previous sort of template zone that we introduced to council for 3333 Metchosin, where we learned that it was best for council to review the zone ahead of the actual rezoning application.
Okay, thank you. And does this ever go to the planning land use committee at all?
So the rezoning application for 532 to 542 Latoria Road has already gone to the Planning and Land Use Committee. It was, I believe, in the summer. And it did not proceed to council right away because we were awaiting the adoption of the North Latoria area plan.
Okay, gotcha. I understand. Thank you very much. Move to Councillor Jensen. Sorry for all the questions.
Thank you, Worship. Mari, just circling back to the section 219 covenants. I mean, the only way to enforce an encroachment of some description or non-compliance with the covenant is by the Supreme Court. Is that right? Okay, that's what I figured. So would we not consider other pathways like building this into the bylaw in some form, building these situations into the bylaw, then allowing the city to conduct their own bylaws investigation, issue fine notices, that kind of idea? I think it just bugs me to think that we would have to race off and hire a law firm to satisfy some kind of encroachment to a section 219 covenant. Your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, a section 219 covenant is the tool that we have used for many, many years for rezoning applications. All of our CD zones have a 219 covenant on title that we review as part of the review of the development permit and the building permit. That is a common practice for other municipalities as well, I would say. I think we would have to just be very careful of what would typically go within a land use bylaw. So sticking with land use and building form. And anything that is above and beyond that is appropriate for a section 219 covenant.
Thank you.
Councillor Georgeson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question about the where we're at with the policy around respecting existing neighborhoods.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So Actually, this evening I'll be presenting the proposed new policy projects to focus on in 2026. I can give some more background at that time as well, but when we looked at our sort of master list of policy projects, some of those directions that we have received from council would likely be more appropriate as part of an update to our OCP. We also do have some infill policies that are already in place in the OCP, as well as we could integrate additional policies as part of the adoption of small scale multi-unit housing, which we'll be bringing forward in the next couple of months in advance of the deadline of June 30th. So there are a few options for council to consider, but we wanted to create more of a strategic process for policy planning, which we will discuss this evening as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Day, second time.
Thank you. I have a motion to propose, and that is that floodplain mapping be a requirement for all North Latoria development applications.
Okay. Seconder, please. Oh, no, we don't need seconder. That's committee of the whole. Also open it up for discussions. Councillor Jensen.
I would like to hear from staff on the sort of how this might be different from what we're already doing with these applications as they come forward, or whether there's a net benefit to the community by embarking down this road, or if this is a duplication. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So the North Latoria area plan does have a policy that requires development proposals to demonstrate compliance with provincial flood construction levels. That is within the area plan. Within the development agreement for each of the rezoning applications, we also have a requirement for floodplain mapping as well. So I think those are likely stronger tools than a direction from council. Staff can certainly take that direction and ensure that we negotiate that as part of rezoning applications. And we will ensure that that is integrated within the development agreement as a requirement. But there are a number of level of different tools right now where we would require that.
Go ahead. Sorry, Councillor Jensen, just probably then over.
Sorry, thanks. I turned it off by mistake. Sorry, but thank you, Mari. But so if I heard you right, could we have half a dozen different floodplain analyses coming in for the developments across the board, or are these developers going to get together and use one service provider? Or, you know, what do you foresee happening with individual applications coming forward as opposed to doing it en masse?
Yeah, so if they came in independently, that is essentially identifying the buildable area and the non-buildable area for each specific property. So it wouldn't be for the North Latoria area plan as a whole. The area plan has been adopted now. So if we were to integrate floodplain mapping within the area plan, that would likely be an OCP amendment. So it would be a site-by-site implementation and assessment of the floodplain mapping at this time.
What information are they using to establish, you know, the lines on the map for the floodplain? Where does that originate, or what are they comparing it to? Or I heard some provincial guidelines that you had mentioned. Like, do they start from scratch and do an analysis of their property as far as flooding goes, and then that's the report they submit, or how does it work?
Thank you for the question, Councillor
Give my
Jansen.
ignorance.
So typically, we would be requesting flood control or flood hazard report, and that would be assessed by a qualified engineer that specializes in that, and they would be identifying the what floor elevation the building needs to be located at in order to not be impacted by flooding in the future. So any residential floor area of the building would need to be above a certain elevation to avoid any impacts related to flooding. So it's a specialized report that we would ask developers to uh, prepare and have, and then we would be also requiring them to enter into flood control covenants to ensure that all the mitigation requirements and recommendations that come from that report are followed as development proceeds.
Thank you.
May I motivate?
Certainly.
I just wanted to motivate you because I believe there's also a condition within all of our development agreements that the water coming off the property is not greater than it was prior to development. So in order to do that within an area that's filled with natural springs, currently, the only thing that we have to rely on is topographical maps to identify elevations and flood levels, which do exist with the province. But typically, as we see developments come forward, there's a lot of land alteration that goes with the development. So what we've been relying on as topographical maps could look very different as proposals come forward. So I'm just looking to see that we have specifically any development that comes forward has had an investigation. I heard that we're going to be requiring geotechnical studies, but I didn't hear floodplain mapping, and we don't have floodplain mapping included with our OCP at this time. So I'm just putting this motion forward to try to ensure that that's one of the things that we have for any project that is moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. You hung up. Oh, okay. So I just want to make sure you, in plain English. So a confirmation of what was just stated right now. I want to clearly understand that we're achieving what Councillor Day wants with the floodplain mapping with what we're doing right now with our developers. I just want to make sure I'm confirming that right now. Except they're paying for it.
Yes, thank you. So yes, we can certainly take Councillor Day's motion and we would apply that as part of each rezoning application moving forward.
Okay, I like that. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the question right now. All those, oops. Can we just rehear it or re-see it or something? Yeah, please.
I have that floodplain mapping be required for all North Latoria area developments. Was that correct, Councillor Day?
Clear on that one? Okay. Oh, certainly, Councillor Ward.
Maybe I'm missing something here, but I'm wondering if anyone can define the boundaries of the floodplain specifically. Is it identified by the province, by the city? Maybe Mari, you could clarify exactly, like, does it impact all properties or is it one or two lots, you know, on the south side of this zone? I'd like just a little clarity before I vote on anything.
Yeah, thank you. So in our OCP in the development permit area for hazards identifies that the guidelines relate to flooding for all areas of Colwood located below 5.6 meters in elevation above the Canadian geodetic vertical datum. So we do have a specific elevation that it would apply to.
Right, push it again.
So, and just for clarity, that this entire parcel or parcels falls below that elevation, it would all be designated floodplain, like each lot in the North Latoria plan.
So that has not been determined because we do not have the mapping. So as part of the floodplain assessments at the time of development permit that we would require, that is when they would determine where these properties lie within that specific elevation.
I guess I'm just confused because then wouldn't that be sort of an automatic for any property in Colwood if you were going to develop and you were at risk of being below that level? Wouldn't something trigger it? Or does that necessitate council to make a motion on that every time? Like, I feel like something is awry here, that we're doing something specific here that we haven't done anywhere else. And I wonder who's gotten away with it, who has had to do the work. And I guess my concern here would be, is there extra cost for, say, lot owners on the north end that are just going to determine, no, we're not in it. Why do we not know this ahead of time, I guess is my question. And that's not a criticism of the city. It just feels like to me it's a process that's missing in an area where I guess potentially it could be a thing. So yeah, I'm a neophyte at the floodplain piece, but I'm lost on that one. I just don't get it.
Marty? Or
Yeah, so the requirement for the natural hazard floodplain development permit does apply citywide. So anytime there's a development that is located 5.6 meters below the geodetic, the Canadian geodetic, as Murray mentioned, would be subject to the natural hazards DPA, and they would be required to apply for the environmental development permit and follow all the conditions that are within that natural hazard DPA. So this would be that would be typically assessed by staff whenever a zoning application comes in. We'll look at what elevation they're proposing to develop on, and we'll see if it meets that parameter. If it does, then they will have to apply for that, and if it doesn't, then it's not applicable.
okay, sorry.
So again, correct me if I'm wrong, then would that not render this motion redundant if it happens anyway? You're saying any application that comes in, staff would review it, identify if it falls below that line, and then the necessary steps would have to happen. So I don't understand why we're doing an extra step here. I guess that's where I'm lost still.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we have a number of tools that are requiring this. So we have our OCP, the area plan has a policy that requires it. And then all of the rezoning applications will have a requirement within the development agreement to require that report and mapping to be completed prior to issuance of the development permit. So I think this resolution would just ensure that staff negotiate that as part of the development agreement, which will be coming forward to council. But there are a number of tools that already require it for this specific area.
Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Chair. I think it sounds surplus to me. I don't think there's a need for this.
Thank you. Councillor Jordison.
Thank you. And I'm the opposite way. I don't understand why our city doesn't define this already for the entire city. Like, forget about just areas that we're looking at now. Like, one area in North Latoria can affect another area. It was just, I think, stated that we don't know where the boundaries are. And I think that not having this mapping for the city is problematic, because I think there's a lot of areas that are in the floodplain. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm with Ian here and get a little bit lost with this, but so it is my understanding that we are already doing this work, but it's site specific when it comes forward to the DP stage, correct? So to follow Councillor Day's motion, is there a cost attached to do floodplain mapping? Like if we were to have somebody come and do that, there's going to be an additional cost to the city for that, correct?
So if we were doing that as part of the broader OCP for the entire city, certainly that would be a pretty significant
What would
project to do.
significant costs be for something like that? Do you have an idea, just ballpark? No,
I don't know.
but significant is probably enough. So if we're already doing the work, I think, and it cites,
It's not germane to the, we're not talking about the city doing this at our cost.
It's germane to the discussion. I'm gonna rule that way. And if you want to, obviously you can go ahead and motion that for my overruling, so. Okay, thank you. John, you wanted to make a comment, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. We'd just like to remind you that community planning did have a budget item for us to do floodplain mapping in 2025. That project with our reorganization has been pushed to the engineering side. So as part of our stormwater management master plan update, we are doing the floodplain mapping currently. Is in the planning stages, so it will be completed sometime in 2026. And that cost is around 100,000 for the entire city.
Okay, thanks very much for that clarification, John. Council Ward.
I think going back to what Councillor Olson was asking, just a slightly different variant on that. Am I correct, Marty, in this case that we would be asking each individual applicant to conduct this? And then on my second part of that is, if that's the case, then do we have any kind of idea of the approximate cost of what that would look like for an individual applicant?
So yes, we would be requiring each applicant to conduct this mapping of the flood construction level on each site, so site by site. That would form a part of their package of their submission for rezoning or development permit. So that is part of their other reports that are required, like a TIA and an environmental impact assessment. So I'm not aware of the specific cost of that study, but it would be a requirement of minimum submission requirements for those applications
Yeah, and
because
sorry, could I interject, Mari, just for clarification, when you say we would require that as a result of this motion were it successful, or we would already require that?
we would already require it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Councillor Day, please. Us.
Just very briefly, the reason for my making the motion is because when developments come forward, the floodplain mapping has to do with the elevation of the land, and that elevation changes with development. So I don't appear to have any awareness of when the elevations are being changed when a development proposal comes forward. That's not part of the information that we get, is how the land will be altered. And because of that, I'm trying to protect the city from negative impacts to flooding in the Latoria area, which has been prone to flooding for many years.
Okay, seeing no other discussion, do you just want to flash up the motion? Thank you very much, Corporate Officer. Okay, everyone clear of what the motion is on the floor? Councillor Ward?
Mr. Mayor, I'm clear on the motion, but I think understanding Councillor Day's intent, to me, if this is happening already, would that not be better achieved? And this is just a question for all to ponder, by perhaps looking at an amendment to simply ask that when floodplain mapping occurs for each development site as it comes forward, that the elevations, et cetera, whatever the language should be, happen based on the raw land at time of acquisition or prior to, because Councillor Day, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're saying the land as it exists in this moment has a particular flood potential. Then the floodplain mapping occurs, you're saying, based on experience, I gathered that, you know, there has been clearing and changing of that lot. So would we not accomplish what you're looking for? Rather than just saying floodplain mapping be required, you're going to just get a duplicate of what's already happening. You're not seeing any real change. Would you not be better served by specifying that the floodplain mapping happened with the land in its raw state or the state it is today or prior to rezoning? Because otherwise, we're, in my opinion, I would say we're just simply asking for something to happen that's already happening, which may well just be a repeat of what you're seeing today.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. Currently, when development proposals come forward, we are not seeing floodplain mapping come with that proposal. I'm asking that that floodplain mapping come with the proposal and it be reflective of the real conditions. So we know what it is now with nothing built there. We can see where the water is halfway up the lot at the corner of Wishart and Latoria. But once they change the area, it's going to change. So we do need to know, because you take away all that sponge of 6 meters deep peat, pretty soon when the rain falls, that water is going to go a lot further up the hill.
Yeah. Any other discussion? I'm going to just call the question right now. All those in favor? And those opposed? It's the rest of us. So that motion fails. And anyone, okay, so we'll go back to the original staff recommendation. Is there anyone that wants to make that motion, please? Okay, Councillor Jensen, discussion on the original motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jordison.
I just want to say that I will be looking for the flood mapping or requirements that we've been told that are supposed to happen when these come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Good point. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I can't support the motion because I've had exactly 0 assurances that we'll actually achieve what's being outlined. There are no guarantees what trees are being retained or how we're dealing with the stormwaters on the lands or whether we even have a number to meet as the end result. So it's unfortunate. I hate having to always be the one who has higher standards, but that's the way it is.
Okay, noted. Call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Councillor Day opposes. Motion carries. We'll move on. 5.2, Latoria Road Path Developments, Frontage Improvements. CEO Johnson, you want to introduce the speaker, please?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a report that comes forward for frontage improvements along the path development site, where they're looking to do some DCC work as part of their development. And this is proposing what it is they're looking to do. And our staff, Joshua Bayless and John Rosenberg, are here to provide council with an overview.
Okay, thank you. Who's doing it?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Over to you.
Just cognizant of the time here, we have 2 items left, so I'll go a little quicker. And then if you need me to pause or slow down, please let me know. You could just bring up the presentation. Thank you. Thank you. So Jason did a good job of an overview there. Really, we're here to bring an opportunity forward from past developments. They're obligated to do some frontage improvements for a phase of their development, and there's some synergies that we may look to recognize. So I'm going to bring that forward to you tonight for discussion. So typically, this is an arterial road classified under our road atlas. If this were greenfield, this is our basis for design. So this is the 5-laning, obviously not needed today, not looking to achieve this today, but this would be the starting point at which we might talk about frontage improvements from center line back to the property line for past developments. This is some insight into the area. Also, I should acknowledge, thank you for taking the time to walk this. I think it was a few weeks ago now. So we got a little bit of firsthand information, some topic discussion there, which I thought was great. But here you'll see looking eastward towards Quarry Street on Latoria Road on the left-hand side, and then on the right is the Quarry intersection. So moving further east towards Quarry Street, it's a little bit of site context. Looking west away from Quarry Street towards Wishart. A little context again. So really the proposal brought forward is an interim solution. So instead of the full array of amenities being lane widths, sidewalk widths, and bike lane widths, we looked at the entire corridor. Obviously, there's a lot of topography there to consider. You've got the big slope on the north side and then property line on the south side, limiting what we can do without building retaining walls in an ultimate configuration. So we worked backwards from that and worked with path developments in an effort to give the city more opportunity in the future and flexibility for future development should the need arise. Path developments put forward a 0.5 meter to a 2 meter additional dedication over and above what was already dedicated at the time of rezoning. And this was to accommodate further pushing sidewalk back away from center line and allowing for the possibility for widening, future widening of Latoria Road should the occasion ever arise. Primary reason for that is reducing retaining walls on the north side, which is where that large slope is on Latoria Road. And then further sort of negotiated outcomes on that, again, to fit the amenities along with the possibility for the laning required many years from now, a reduced sidewalk width, a reduced bike lane width, but still having that as separated from the travel lane itself. So not proposed to be built today, but this is the vision for what could come in the future should the need ever arise. You've got the 4-laning there with the smaller boulevards, bike lanes, and sidewalks. You can see that in that corridor, should the need ever be there, it can fit. So this could be a basis of design for future opportunities inside of Colwood. And it should just go back to that first lane. So you can see it's probably very hard to see here. Just gonna see if I can use that laser pointer. I cannot. Ultimately, it's just the half of that cross section that is looking to be built, and you would just have a lane into Royal Bay and a lane out of Royal Bay. So there's no 4-laning happening today. There's no additional lane capacity other than some left turn bays and things like that. But this is just the right-hand side of that cross section being proposed for today. So this is just a little bit of context. Should the city sort of not be interested in this opportunity, this would be sort of the basis of where we would work with path development should we need to look at frontage improvements only. This would be the sidewalk, bike lane, and curb back. So sort of more historically, okay, this is just the basic frontage improvements for the development. Here is a breakdown. So site plan and work zones. I think the biggest benefit that this project really brings to the community and why it's sort of deemed as an opportunity for council is the connectivity piece. So we go from Quarry Street, and this on the south side, the works would bring a sidewalk all the way from Quarry Street to Wishart. So we've got Latoria Creek Park there, we've got the crosswalk there, we've got bus stops there. We would complete that segment of sidewalk and bike lane. And then having everything shifted over and leaving existing asphalt surface would allow for, again, that amenity of a bike lane and a walking path of sorts on the north side, again, connecting that connectivity all the way to Wishart. In the event this isn't sort of realized, those amenities, if negotiated with path, would be ending at property line, so short of Latoria Creek Park there. This is intended, it's really hard to see here. I'm hoping you guys had the opportunity with the presentation to zoom in and look at things, but ultimately it's broken into 3 zones. The one zone being paths, so the purple, or maybe pink, is the zone that path would be fronting from cash out of their own pockets. The green is zone 2, which is to be, I believe it's credits. I can look at the details there in a sec. DCC credits, and then the sort of more tan or orangey color is DCC cash. That might be reversed. It'll be in the financial section and go through it. So overall cost summary, path developments is zone 1, as I showed there. So it's really the closest piece to their property line. That's 1.87 million. Path DCC eligible cash is zone 3 and 4, which is the furthest away from their frontage. So you can see that in the pink zone, and then zone 2 is the 1.3 million, which is DCC credits. Total project cost is estimated at 4.19 million. The intent of this is like we've done with previous DCC sort of credit and cash arrangements. This would be the upset limit. We'd go to tender. Everything would still be run through the city for approvals and acceptance. It's not just a blank check to do the work. It's an acknowledgement of the work to be done with we think it's going to be this. And then we go through a due process of executing the construction should it be endorsed tonight. So staff recommendation in front of you tonight is that council authorize staff to accept PATH's offer to be paid $993,000 in development cost charge DCC cash for that one portion, and that council accept PATH's offer to be paid $1.32450 million in DCC credits for the, which was zone 3 and 4, and that PATH pay cash for their portion of the frontage works as the development, as per the development agreement. So a fast summary, I'll give you that. If you have any questions, please let me know. And short of that, that's my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. I will open it up to council questions. Councilor Jordison, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that this is, I actually walked this, so thank you for inviting us to do that. I think this is a great way to get this road built. My only concern is that the current parking in front of Latoria Creek Park impedes the area right out front where people park. It'll kind of be in the way of the bike lane, that sort of thing. And I just wish that there was somewhere else that maybe we could close off that entrance and find another way into Latoria Park and provide some kind of parking or pull out or something closer to it at the other end. I'm not sure that's possible, but I wouldn't mind asking about that.
Joshua, you have
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's not contemplated right now. I think the difficulty there is that being deemed an arterial road, typically we would veer away from any scallop parking. I understand there's habits that have been formed with people parking there. Ideally, with the added connectivity through sidewalks, also internal network and internal parking, it is staff's belief that those amenities are sufficient. I mean, it's going to be the odd person and the change that's going to happen. The other piece to add to that is we recognize the loss of parking through the whole corridor, not only just Latoria Creek Park, but on the north side with that sort of leftover asphalt surface that is there today that won't be utilized as travel lanes. We're working with PATH's civil consultants to look at realizing some scallop parking on the other side as an interim measure. Again, recognizing there is a loss of parking in that entire corridor through that sort of habit and everything else. And then we think with the crosswalks and the sidewalk amenities that it'll be sufficient.
great question. Councilor Grove.
Yeah, thank you. As about the parking as well, but I think that my first question is about that. Purple stops at the property line with path, the purple strip. And then the piece we're talking about here with the bus pad is 100% city cost. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the chair, that is correct. What was the question? That just confirming those?
Just confirming that that piece that we're talking about by the bus pad there in the park, the existing entrance to the park is indeed city, and that's part of Latoria Creek Park, right?
Yeah, essentially anything outside of the frontage of the property and then outside of the curb and gutter moving north So there's some additional paving limits, there's some additional drainage infrastructure, and that's all to be paid by the city. And then anything left and right outside of the property as well.
So in this motion, there's no reference, or should I say the scope of this particular project does not include that piece now, or it does?
Sorry, through the chair, it does. It does. That work.
So that'll get built. Okay. Then the parking comment too, because, and by the way, thank you for the tour. It was wonderful to get out there. And I think it helps very much. The parking issue then, being accessible road, et cetera, and seeing the site, it made sense to have the cars perhaps redirect to the Quarry Park parking lot, which has been built next to the access to the park. Is that correct? Yeah. And I think that that is simply a matter of changing habits, because seeing it, it doesn't make sense to have the cars there parked in the riparian zone anyhow, although it is the side of the road. I understand that just from an environmental perspective, but also for the danger of the cars and, you know, the traffic and the nature of the road classification. So I was just wondering if the parking lot at the quarry end is, I don't know what the size of that is. Do you have there's one with the hydro chargers, right, for the quarry park, but there's another one going to be upgrade a little bit.
Yeah, if I may, through the chair, I believe it's 39. 34 stalls at the upper Quarry Street.
And the upper one. Yeah, good. Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would echo some of the comments, Councillor Jordison. I think, generally speaking, I'm supportive. I think the connectivity is good, and receiving the frontage works earlier is better for the community, enhances safety for, you know, particularly in that area for the many pedestrians, cyclists, people going to Royal Bay High School. That's a very high traffic corridor. One of the few in Colwood where there is a lot of that type of traffic, which is only going to grow significantly as Latoria South hits build out, and with Quarry Park sort of coming on stream, that will become, you know, even busier than it already is. And speaking of busy, so there's a pretty busy intersection, as you referenced, at Quarry and Latoria. And this plan right now, I believe, calls for a signalized intersection and a left turn lane there. And I question if we're being short-sighted along the lines of Latoria and Metchosin Road when we chose a signalized intersection instead of a roundabout. You know, and I know we've now contemplated, you know, maybe a roundabout is the right route there. And I see reasons for that being twofold. One, you know, flow of vehicles, and that's not to say that I want to see unimpeded, you know, racing through Royal Bay. I've certainly been outspoken on the fact that it's the highest density area in Colwood with a lot of young families, and it's constructed in such a way that pedestrians travel back and forth across that road more so than almost anywhere else. But a roundabout would allow for continuous movement, and it would also naturally impede the speed that happens there right now. And, you know, I think that's something that we need to take a look at. Provincial guidelines suggest that should be the first look, and the land exists there because of that sort of paved area you referenced where people are parking on the north side. There is already space there to consider something like that there. The traffic volumes there right now, when you go through there, peak times of the day are pretty significant. So I could see that being a benefit to folks transiting through the Royal Bay area, as well as the many people that will live there and work there and go to school there. Also, the interim nature of this, I see reference to that throughout here, and what's phrased as the ultimate cross section. But yet we're in a place where I think this council has been pretty clear we're waiting on an updated transportation master plan. And while I know that's what we have in place today, you know, I have been a very much an opponent of what I view as an unnecessary, you know, 4 to 5 lane construction through the area there, which harkens back to a very outdated, non-data driven transportation plan to force people up there, and you know, yada yada. You heard me sing this song and dance a few times. So, you know, I wonder if we're better off kind of doing it right the first time. And this is right. Don't get me wrong. This isn't a let's go back to the drawing board and do it, but approach it with the mindset that this should do. And I like the idea that you left the space in there, but you know, I want to be clear that I'm not supporting it because I want to leave the space to build 4 lanes or 5 lanes. I'm supporting it because I think it's going to provide connectivity for, for variety of transportation users of all stripes. Yeah, and I think that's really it for me. I mean, I just go back to personal experience looking at the gateway to Latoria from Metchosin and the interim nature of the works that were there. It was quite an attractive design when you pulled in. There was a center boulevard, 2 lanes, and under the existing transportation master plan, that was replaced with sort of the entry to a highway that you see now, 4 lanes across, which encourages people. You turn onto that and your instinct is hit the gas pedal. And then it narrows down to a more reasonable section. And I want to make sure that we're not then opening that up in kind of an hourglass shape and keeping that going. And this obviously dovetails in with our discussion on Metchosin Road later, is that we need a lot of 3-lane sections with the ability for people who live along these areas to access and egress the roads. But we don't need highways through our neighborhoods, because this isn't a panacea to the Colwood crawl. You're not going to get people into downtown at commuter time any quicker. So I just leave you with the thought of a roundabout. I know there's costs associated with it. That's a short-term pain for a long-term gain, in my opinion. And I would like to see us take a more fixed or permanent view versus, versus this interim concept. But otherwise, I will support it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jensen, I'm very aware of the time, folks, here, so I want to get to that last item, so you can.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to staff. The walkabout was great, other than my sudden near-death experience. But can we hear a little bit to, I did too make a note here that it certainly says signalizing the intersection of Quarry. And is that intended to be temporary then? We circle back later and look at when the density comes up to look at it as a possible location for a roundabout?
Hey, John?
Hey, Your Worship, through to Councillor, I'm going to add in Councillor Ward because it kind of dovetails his question to Councillor Jansen. We haven't looked at that intersection for a roundabout. We definitely think about roundabouts in every intersection now. I mean, we are contemplating, for instance, a roundabout at Metchosin and Latoria sometime far into the future. Certainly in the next and near future, I think council is going to see a discussion about a roundabout at Metchosin and Souk. My concern, and I am not a traffic engineer, but certainly in the many conversations we've had about roundabout, the Quarry intersection is going to be, and Councillor Ward, you alluded to it, there's a lot of high traffic volume with regards to the high school and the commercial, and the elementary school is going to do ancillary uses to the high school. That back and forth traffic on a pedestrian level will crush that intersection with regards to cars, because the cars will have to stop. So when we get into those peak high volume traffic flows, it's almost a certainty that a roundabout would be an F, and it would get past Wisher, it would get down to Metchosin. Now, if council wants us to spend a few dollars and have that confirmed, we can do that, but I'm almost certain that would be the case because of the pedestrian flow. It's so high and so significant during the peak flows in that morning with that school traffic. I think it would be a problem. But if we want to spend a couple of $1,000 or $5,000 having it analyzed, to have a look, I do believe there is some, you're right, it would help slow down traffic. I love that. I believe there's some room. I do think we have infrastructure problems there. We got a massive hydro duct and a couple other things that I think might end up in the traffic flow of that. But again, we can spend, I don't think a lot of money looking at it to confirm that, but I do think it would be problematic. The expansion piece, I agree completely that when it comes to the expansion of Latoria Road, we're decades probably, and that's with an S, that's plural, before we need to expand that road. But the fact of the matter is, I'll definitely be dead. I don't know how much further it's going to go, but that road's going to have to go to 5 lanes. And what we're trying to do now, and we're thankful to have the agreement with Path Developments, that we're at least, they've given us this extra land to get us away from the retaining wall that'll be needed there. We're not going to need it for decades, but let's take it now to cover our butts for the future and for other citizens. So that's the reason. There's certainly, I see no intent with regards to getting to anything more than 2 lanes. So we would be looking tonight for direction on the roundabout if you really felt compelled for us to spend some money on it. But, again, with the experience we've had looking at other places and knowing what we're looking at design-wise, I don't think it would be able to do that because of all that high school traffic. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
you.
John.
The only other note I made, your worship, sorry, was, can we, this is a question to, Mr. Bayless, Mr. Rosenberg, can we realize with this plan some scallops for 3 or 4 cars or a scallop for 3 or 4 cars at the park entrance there? I think it would be an opportunity missed. I understand there's parking around the corner, that's great. But, you know, I'm thinking someone whose mobility is somewhat restricted, you know, doesn't want to walk 2 blocks to the park from the parking lot. Is there an opportunity there for something like that in this configuration?
If I may, through the chair, I would say there's always opportunity. It comes at a cost. That area in particular is where we have the least land, like physical land. It drops off. There's a lot of well, riparian area. There's a lot to consider there. We're working through and waiting for a revised design. I would say that that is one of the toughest places. Now, if we moved a little bit east, it becomes more realistic. Again, it's the space, and then what are we giving up? I mean, I think it could be done. It certainly hasn't been contemplated between our groups.
Do you see value in that proposition as far as the expenditure, or would it be extreme?
Yeah, that's a tough one for me to answer. I would just maybe reiterate that we've worked with the developer. We've come up with our recommendation, and we think it's solid. From an accessibility standpoint, the parking lot with the 34 parking stalls that can be driven to. There are accessible stalls there. Our trails are accessible. Like it might change habits, it might change patterns, but I think that would be potentially a short-term sort of band-aid to maybe we just pull it.
Thank you, and I don't want to slow this down because I see a lot of value here. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I think this is representing a net benefit to the community. I still have some pretty major concerns for that area. And in particular, because the Wishart Road intersection was promised a light at that intersection in 1999 under the Master Development Agreement for Royal Bay. So it's frustrating as someone who's been here a long time, who knows how difficult it can be to turn on the racing stretch of Latoria Road, and I know that that is shared with residents of Byzantin as well. But in the documentation, we're now showing the light at Byzantin being the only done deal. That's the only light that's mentioned other than Quarry. So we've skipped over the one that was promised for 25 years and gone straight to the 2 that are new to this term. And I find that quite frustrating. There is a need for a light, and I think that both the school traffic issues make that more sensible for a light at Quarry than a roundabout. Simply from what I've observed in the other roundabouts in our region where cyclists and pedestrians are present and use them frequently. Visibility is an issue in roundabouts, whether or not you see the pedestrian. Quite often, the pillar in your car that separates your windscreen from your side window can block your vision of a pedestrian on the side of the road. Plantings, etc., that make things more attractive. There's going to be a lot more to shake out in the future. I hope that we don't build it too terribly permanent, because there's going to be a lot of reckoning with the floodplain area, which this is got a lot of culverts and a lot of action on the road. Thanks.
Thanks very much. And of course, I just got 2 questions. You know me, I always lose sleep over money. So my question is, I have 2 questions. My first one is the cash contribution and the DCC credits. Are those hard caps that we have, that 900,000 and the 1.3 million, or, you know, are they hard caps? So I guess what it comes to is, what if there's overruns? What happens then?
If I may, through the chair, those are hard caps, and we would have to return to council with justification as to why and if any changes were made.
Okay, fine, that's good. And my second question is to finance, are we okay with these, how's our road DCCs? Are we in good shape with this? Can we afford this? I have to ask the question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and the chart was provided showing our DCC balance that we had forecast.
Yeah.
We did just receive in December new regulations regarding how DCCs are collected, but the fund is sufficient now to support these works because they were
Right. I knew that immediately, but I know we have
Yeah.
other things in our heads, like
Yes.
widening Metchosin, things like that. So trying to make sure that, yeah, someone's taking all of this into account.
Yeah, and it would appear like it on the surface today, we have not seen that we have a shortfall of funding available to support the projects that we are aware of.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Seeing no other questions, I'm gonna look for a motion, please. Okay, Council Ward. Thank you very much, and that's all I need. I don't need two. And questions? Any other discussion? Okay, gonna call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. It's pretty big step for us here. Okay, we'll get on to Metchosin Road Widening Project Update and Design. This is the one that we had at council, and we sent it back to I believe infrastructure and transportation for comments. I don't know if councils all had the opportunity to watch the video. It was a great discussion that happened on it. I don't know if we want to go through the whole presentation again because we previously had it. We had recommendations, and like I said, we sent this off to ISC for consideration and recommendation. Sorry, Council Ward. Sorry.
I was just going to do it. Councillor Jordison had whispered, which was to remind you there were several folks looking to do public participation.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. Ladies, see, that's why this crazy method drives me crazy. People have to remind me. I'm going to open the floor for public participation on this item. Please. I know there's three hands that put their hands up for discussion. Mr. Conrad. Push the button. Push the button.
No, my time starts. I'm going to request 2 additional minutes. In part 4 of the motion that you're going to consider, and that's council direct staff to investigate targeted intersections, upgrades and active transportation enhancements for Lagoon Road and to Latoria Road, section of Metchosin Road, provided that the proposed improvements can be designated to maintain an acceptable level of service. I would like to ask through the chair to engineering, is this in lieu of having 3 lanes in this section, or is this work in addition to the 3 lanes in this section? That's my first question. I would also like to know if the placement of the sidewalks that were ran from Ben Homer to Cutlow in any way are going to jeopardize the possibility of having 3 lanes in that section. And the reason I ask that, unbeknownst to this engineering department and this council, almost 4 years ago to the day, 24 of our residents met with the engineering staff and this may be new to engineering and to the council, but 4 years ago, almost to the day, a group of 21 concerned neighbors met with 2 city officials and McElhaney engineers who attended the meeting by Zoom. At that meeting, I specifically asked if the placement of the proposed sidewalks, would that prevent adding 3 lanes to Metchosin Road in this section? I was told twice because I asked the question again after I had heard the answer the first time, that if the sidewalks needed to be removed in order to put 3 lanes on Metchosin Road at this section, the city was prepared to do that. Now that was said by city officials to 21 neighbors. Now, going to Metchosin Road, I'm recommending the driving lane be 3.6 meters because you take your center line and your fog line And the center line, the measurements go center line to center line. So you take the half the width of the center line off one side and half the width of the center fog line off the other. It becomes a 3.5 meter drivable lane. So I'm recommending 3.6. By the way, I support the 3-lane proposal. But there's some questions. Under the Motor Vehicle Act, if we keep our lanes narrow, under the new act, a person in a vehicle must pass a cyclist and give them 1 meter of space. I don't know by adding a solid barrier if that nullifies that rule, but normally, if you're passing now a cyclist on the road, you must pull over to one side and give that cyclist 1 meter of space. That's the new provincial law. So if that lane is narrow, how is a car going to be able to do that? Unless that rule is nullified by a solid barrier, and that I don't know. The final thing is snow removal. If you have narrow lanes, the snowplow is going to come down, push the snow into the bike lane. Then the bike lane has to be cleared. So it goes into the sidewalk. Then the sidewalk has to be cleared. So special equipment is going to have to be purchased if we don't have lanes wide enough to stack the snow on one side or push it in piles on the center lane. And I think these are things you have to consider when you look at 3-lane Metchosin Road to make sure you give yourself enough room to do the things that we're going to have to do seasonally. Thank you.
Next, please. Mr. Blog.
Need those handicap spaces. Okay, is this turned on?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I guess it is. Okay, I spoke with Jennifer this afternoon and she was going to put my handout that I passed to you on the agenda.
Yeah, it's going to be attached tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to add to what Roger said. There are 145 residences that are impacted by not putting a 3rd lane down Metchosin from Lagoon Road to Kenny Place. They have access through Lagoon Road to Kenny Place. Okay. The streets are Kenny Place, Metchosin Road East and West, Farview, Daniel Place, Hatley Drive, Hatley Lane, Passageway, Perimeter Close, Perimeter Place, Grattan Road, and Amy Lee. So there's 144 people there, at least. Don't know how many suites are rented out in that area that need to have access without slowing traffic. The other thing is that this is a primary route into Royal Bay and beachlands for emergency vehicles. And at the moment, from my discussions with the integrated traffic patrol people, they're concerned about all this development that's going on throughout the western and southern end of the island that restricts lane width so that they cannot reach an incident in a timely manner. And in particular, they said, okay.
I'll give you 30 seconds, Mr. Blog.
Okay, in particular, they referenced what's happening on the Gorge Road in Sandage and Tillicum, parts of Brentwood Bay, and areas in the western communities. And as this is a primary route for all emergency vehicles, it deserves to have a 3rd lane where they can at least get down through the traffic flow with minimum interference.
Okay. Thanks very much. Okay. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. It's pretty frustrating sitting here and listening to a lot of discussion about long-term planning for transportation on Latoria or Metchosin Road, both two important arterial roads around our community. It's frustrating because for over 6 years, we've been asking for an updated master transportation plan to provide a context which would address many of the questions that you were talking about. And so I need to re-register that frustration again. And I need to re-ask, because I've done it before, where and when can we expect to receive the updated version of the master transportation plan? Because I think we're going to be finished all this stuff before we even have it. So getting close to the point of saying, what's the point? Okay, so frustration aside, I'm speaking on behalf of the Royal Bay Homeowners Association in support of Roger Conrad's suggestion of 3.6, 3.7, or 3.6, 3.5, 3.7 meters for driving lanes on Metchosin Road. I'll cut to the chase here. The majority of the people that use Metchosin Road use it for vehicles, and that's a fact. And if we did a proper survey, which has not been done, of all the people in the community, I'm sure you would find that over 90% of them would be saying they would prioritize safe and efficient and effective transportation for them in driving their vehicles, driving their kids to and from school, to and from activities, etc., going to and from work. They would prioritize that over wider sidewalks. One further point
30
is
seconds.
yeah, is the and this was raised by a member of the committee that Cynthia chairs, which I appreciated what he had to say. He said, you know, a lot of this stuff can go away if we actually just planned for the wider sidewalks and the bike lanes to go along the ocean. We're supposed to have a boardwalk going all the way from the beachlands, and it's going to go all the way to Fort Rod. And it doesn't take a lot more to have it go all the way up the hill to the bus loop. Now, how's that for connectivity? And up there, there's a connection to the Galloping Goose as well. So what are we doing here? I mean, are we going to not protect the best interests of the large majority of people who are using that road? It's so critical, and we would ask that our elected representatives bring reason and common sense and concern about public safety and efficiency and our quality of life to bear over this theoretical nonsense that we've had to put up with for so long. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak at the public hearing? Mr. Conrad, I'll give you another 1 minute.
Thank you, Mayor, but through you to engineering, could I have the answer to my questions, please?
Yeah, this is not a dialogue, unfortunate here. Not unless they're easy answers, gentlemen, because you can't do them in writing. That's the practice, I believe. Corporate officer, please correct me if I'm wrong.
That would be correct.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Conrad,
Yeah,
I
I'm
would
sorry.
encourage you
Yeah,
to
we have to-
email staff and we can
Yeah.
pass it along. Be happy
Otherwise,
to help tomorrow.
it goes on for far too long. Yeah. That's why we have committees. The other committees. Anyways, at this point in time, anyone else wish to speak? Okay, I will move on to the actual item here. It's going to be very unfortunate. I think I'm going to have to continue this. Our regular council meeting's got a short agenda, I believe. And I think I'm sorry, everyone, you came here, but I think I'm going to continue it after the regular council meeting because this is going to require a little more discussion if everyone doesn't mind coming back. And I'm just going to call an end to the meeting at this point in time. No sense starting anything new because we basically have 5 minutes here in this for this committee of the whole. That's okay, everyone. I'm at this point in time gonna adjourn this meeting and we'll come back to it right after council. Okay. And seeing no other, well, there is no other business at this point in time because I'm adjourning the meeting. And yes, I can I'm recessing the meeting. Pardon me. I am recessing the meeting. So we'll see you back. I don't know how long council's gonna be tonight. An hour? No. Yeah, please. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
you can adjourn this meeting when you come back and council is at 6:30. Council can decide to go straight into committee of the whole and we can pick up where we left off.
Okay.
So it would be right at the start of
Guess
council
what,
at
boys?
6:30.
We're right at 6:30. So you don't have to hang around for council meeting. Okay, that's what I'll do. So I will see no other further business. I will adjourn the meeting right now. Thank you. See you at 6:30.